public service blockchain leader at IBM and also a member of our blockchain working group. Come on, Mark.
Thanks, Okay, afternoon, everybody. You have to pardon my notes. When you have to speak after lunch with this kind of group, there's a few points you don't want to repeat that have probably made it a few times. Thanks again. Thanks for inviting me back. I was in a different forum talking with you guys last year about what was going on. And so what I wanted to share is I wanted to take a little bit of time to go back, of my 8 minutes, to go back and talk about 2017 and talk about where we're going for 2018. So I've been in public sector for 25 years. I lead IBM's federal and state and local government group. So needless to say, I've been on the road talking to folks about the most obscure business processes that have ever existed in my lifetime in federal and state and local government, and really trying to determine, right, and talk about those networks that those government entities interact with. And so with that, there's kind of three conclusions that I've come to. And before those three conclusions, obviously, a lot of those discussions have ended in, I don't think blockchain's the right fit for what you're looking for. So that point was made by a bunch of folks earlier today. I definitely take it to heart. There's a lot of these cases. But it's good conversation because they're looking at the challenges and problems that they're having, and blockchain may just not be the right fit. So what I am seeing is, one, I'm having a lot less discussions about blockchain 101. Not that I don't love doing it, but really I think the education portion is kind of coming to an end when it comes to the basics of blockchain. The second thing is that what I'm seeing is that it's not necessarily blockchain that is driving the projects and the need. It's like blockchain is there, and if you think about the trusted data layer that Jose talked about, or you think of some of those other cases, that's where we're seeing the value. So the value is not necessarily the blockchain itself, but what the blockchain enables in the network, right? So a lot of these projects, right, might be coming across as a blockchain project, but it's really focused on cognitive, analytics, IoT, other things. The third one is the one that I think will surprise folks in the audience. So when I talk to various government entities, where I'm having a lot of trouble is finding the intersection between where a government agency or entity wants to sponsor and bring together a blockchain network and where there's value to the overall blockchain network in it being established. So what do I mean by that? Basically, I see kind of one end or the other. Either there's a network that is in desperate need of value, but the government entity is not interested in stepping up and being that sponsor. They want to participate maybe, but they don't want to sponsor it. Or I have a government entity who wants to get a lot of value, but the members of the business network aren't necessarily interested in joining or connecting or spending time in it because it is the government getting the value. So I think that's the biggest lesson learned from 2017 is it has to be that mix. Now the good news is I have found several cases of that mix. And when you get that mix together and you use something like design thinking to drive the value, I'm seeing tremendous, tremendous value in considering blockchain. And I'm seeing that to the point where they don't even want to go through and do POCs. I'm working with agencies right now to prep for pilots, to prep for production pilots, because this value needs to be gained in production. Okay. So where do we go next? So in 2018. So great. I have found the great blockchain network example. We have a business sponsor from the federal or state and local government entity. We can bring the group together. So this is what I call the fun part of the project. Unfortunately, the fun part of the project is the hard part of the project, because you got to answer the hard questions. So I thought I'd give you a couple of these examples of things. So again, if you found the right project, here's some of the things you might run into. And I apologize in advance, I'm a Hyperledger Fabric guy. Everybody who I know knows I am, and I'll just say that, but it's true across other fabrics as well. So one is scalability, performance, and security. Okay? And when you answer these questions, you have to be able to point to real-life production examples. Okay? There's not too many folks out there in public sector that want to do first of a kind. Okay? So for there, I will go to a project like the Global Financing Project I talked about here last year. 5 million transactions in production. Hyperledger Fabric getting about 3,500 transactions per second in the lab. Right? Again, not so much an issue for a permission blockchain. In IBM, we are running multiple projects out of our CIO shop using blockchain around global taxation, around vendor time and recording management, right? So we are using this in our company to drive those efficiencies. Okay? Here's another one. PII, privacy, unstructured data. We heard this a couple of times. Mr. John, I think, put it best, right? That, you know, he didn't mention the quantum word, right? But the quantum word is one of those reasons why you don't want that stuff out there. But there's lots of patterns and ways, and I know that, for example, on the MERSC project, there's a number of ways to deal with those unstructured data elements you still need access to off-chain. In some of the work we're doing with the CDC and FDA, right, they're looking at ways to protect that PII off-chain, but have a pointer hash to be able to access it. So it's something that has to go into the design. The next one I get is, okay, great, it's a permissioned blockchain. How do citizens, individuals, small business get value from that permission blockchain? They're not members of the business network. They don't have a node, right? And the answer is you look to a case, this is one you probably haven't heard of, called we.trade. Okay, so look that up. I think it's we-trade on the internet. It's a banking consortium that got together and offer underbanked services where that's all shared within a blockchain network, but each of those members provides a portal or an application to be able to allow the external user or end user to be able to access it. And then finally, you get the question that I think was just brought up about, well, what about multiple blockchains? So I'll put forward the Walmart Food Safety Network answer, which you can see out there, where basically Walmart stood up a supply chain blockchain, you know, private permission blockchain, and then they extended it to interact with the global food safety network, right? So that's a way for you to be able to both get value for your immediate business network and participate in a broader network, right, without necessarily having to deal with some of those interoperability challenges. So I'm going to leave you that that's the kind of conversations I'm having this year, and I have a question and an ask. So the question is, because Todd asks me this all the time, so why aren't we proliferating with proof of concepts and pilots and all these projects out there? And I will say it's because there's just a discomfort or hesitation of being first. Okay? And I think that's for two reasons. One is, and I hope my friends in the press are not going to use me and quote me on this, nobody wants to say I solved my agency problem with Bitcoin and go on the front page of the Washington Post, right? You just don't want to do that, right? And there's just so much out there. So the education that we do here is key, and that's why I'm a member of the group and I spend time on it. The second thing is, I think the biggest challenge is that first project that's going to get through certification, accreditation, and get into production that's sponsored specifically by a public sector government entity. So I've talked to my colleagues out there, you know who you are. We've all made a pact, right, that we're all going to support each other in that, because the first one getting there, there'll be a bunch of pilots to be able to go forward that are waiting in the wings. So thank you very much.